back to On the Fly. Today we're going to be taking a look at a very different video than the normal videos that we typically put out. Today we'll be taking a look at every single unrestricted free agent for this upcoming 2021-2022 season and taking a look at where they might end up as well as what my prediction is for each contract. So we'll get right into it. We'll start with our forwards as always. We're going to start off with Ryan Getzlaf, who I do believe will receive most likely about a 5 over maybe 2-year contract. He is a good player still, brings that leadership obviously, so because of that I think he'll be signed. Moving on to David Backes, I don't think he'll be getting a contract this year. I think he's going into retirement, so I'll put a little retirement marker there to show that I do believe he's starting to get to that age now where he's either going to get a really small league minimum contract or he will be or he'll be retired, and I think he'll lean towards that retired route a little bit more. Carter Rowney, I believe he will be most likely signed to maybe like a 1.5 over 2-year deal, kind of a bridge deal before he gets a little bit bigger of a contract, especially when he starts playing a bigger role. That's when they'll really start to sort of go after him a little bit more. And then for the mostly AHL guys, Agazino, DeLeo, and Podortelski. So each of these little check marks show that it's a league minimum contract. So I'm considering a league minimum contract anywhere from $1 million down. Obviously, it's not really a league minimum contract, but that's what I'm going to call it just to try and save a little bit of ink and a little bit of space. Next up is Broussard. I believe Broussard will re-sign with Arizona. I'm not entirely sure he will. There will be potential suitors for him, but I think he will in the end sign with them. Probably about $3 million over maybe another 2 years. He is a little bit better of a player, so I think he will sort of get some money, but not enough for you getting players like, say, Getzlaf or someone else that's a little bit older and brings that veteran leadership like Broussard does, but I think he'll get about a $3 million contract. I think other than that, Bunting and Fashing, as well as Chaput, both all these players will get their league minimums. Years will vary. It might be 2 years, it might be 1 year, it might be one of those bridge deals. But I think it'll be around $1 million or less. So next up we have Boston, so with Krejci. And so Krejci I believe will get probably a 4 by 3-year contract. I think he does deserve this contract. He was obviously getting paid $7 million before in the last season, but I do believe that now he's starting to get to that older. He starts to see his role a little bit more, and because of this I think he'll get paid a little bit less, but also you also have Don Sweeney in the head office, so he's really good at getting these players to take team-friendly deals. So I think if they can negotiate with Krejci, they can probably get him on a $4 million deal over 3 years, and I think that's what will end up happening. For Taylor Hall, I think it'll be a little bit bigger of a contract. I think it'll be about 5.5 over 5 years. That's my kind of guess, and that will be a contract that's recurring. But I think that 5.5 is a good starting point for most teams, as he is a pretty good player. And obviously, there's going to be other bidders like the Leafs. I know the Leafs are going to be interested, as well as some other teams. But overall, I think Hall will re-sign with Boston. I don't think he'd allow himself to be traded there, obviously with the Buffalo trade. I don't think they'd allow him, that he'd be wanting to go to Boston if he didn't want to re-sign there. So I think he will re-sign 5.5 over 5 years. Next up, we got Sean Kuraly. I think he will be the first player that will actually move teams. My guess is that he'll probably go to a sort of a rebuilding team. He's not a great player with Boston, but he does provide those logging minutes, lots of defensive games. He's not an offensive player at all. He's not very good, but I think he will go to a team, maybe like a Calgary. So my assumption is it'll be like a Calgary, and they'll sign him to a league minimum deal as well. So anything less than that $1 million, I think if they put him over that, it'd be a major overpayment. But he'll log those fourth line minutes for you, so he's not a terrible player. Moving on down the list, McKegg, obviously he's going to be league minimum contract. Not playing in the NHL yet, so not much of a comparison there. Then you got Dea and Fogarty. Both these players are league minimum players. They won't get much more. Sheahan, I think, will be 2 over 2. That's sort of my prediction for him. Is he is a player that does play in the NHL a little bit, so he'll probably get a little bit more. So that 2 by 2, I think, will be a pretty good contract length for him. And then for Kajula, I think it'll be probably 2.5 over 2. Kind of gives him room to develop as well, so I think that 2.5 over 2 will help him. And then after those 2 years expire, I think it will be a little bit, he'll probably get a little bit more, maybe 3, maybe 4, depending on how he does in those years with Buffalo. Finally, Smith will be league min. Tobias Reeder, I'm not sure about him. I think he'll get probably 1.5 is my guess. He'll be close to that league minimum. I think it'll either be 1 or be 1.5. It's just a matter of which way Buffalo would want to go with him. But I think for sure he'll be back in Buffalo. So I'm going to go 1.5 over 2. 2 years is kind of my idea of most contracts. Obviously, you don't want to go too long term with some of these older guys, as you don't know what's going to happen. You don't want to be just logging contracts. But other than that, I think Ryan for Calgary, we're moving on to the Calgary now. So I think Ryan will be most likely a player at about, we'll call him 2 over 2 again. Most of these guys are players that will go 2-2 or 2-3 or 3-4, or kind of like those longer deals. You start to see the money go up. But overall, if you keep them short, the money won't be high, and especially with the cap not going up next year. The flat cap really hurts teams, especially in their plans to long-term sign. So I think most of the teams you'll see a lot of 2-2 contracts or 1.5-2 or something along that sort of line. Moving on to Levo, I think he'll be as well a 1.5 guy over maybe 3. I think they can probably sign him for that. He's kind of that 4th line, 3rd line kind of player. Not going to be a very expensive guy to pick up, but he will play a lot of minutes for you. So because of that, I think he'll be about a 1.5. Ronaldo, I think, will be a 3 over 2 guy. I think, especially with contracts starting to be less and less long oriented, and only really for the star players, they go for long contracts. I think these 2 years are going to really help most of these guys, as it does give them something to play for, and especially with teams that are rebuilding like Calgary. Most players aren't playing for wins anymore. Now they're just playing to try and get money. So because of that, I think it will give them a little bit more encouragement to see that they have a shot at getting a bigger paycheck at the end of the day. But other than that, I think Ronaldo will be a 3-2 kind of guy. Robinson on Calgary, we league min. For Brock McGinn, I believe he will be another one of these 3-2 guys. So 3 million over 2. Overall, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell as of now what's going on with Carolina, because they are a little bit shaky, and they'll figure it out, I'm sure. But for these guys, I think, especially with they're starting to be pushed up against the cap a little bit more, I could see a 3-by-2 deal for a McGinn. And then for Martinook, who's the next player down here, I think he'll be a 1.5 kind of guy over maybe 2. Mainly because I think if they can lock him up a little bit longer term, it'll be better for both sides, and they're kind of looking to try and stay together for more than just a year. Moving on down to Cedric Paquette, I think he will be a league min. I think he'll be close to that 1.5. I think he might potentially be like a 1.2 over 3 or over 4, just because I think he wants to find a long-term home, and I think the Hurricanes have been good for him. So I think he will be one of those league min, sort of mid-grade players that might be a little more 1.5, but I think in the end he'll be about 1 or lower than that. McCormick, Rempel, and Gust are obviously all going to be, and Smith as well, will all be league min contracts. Obviously, you probably haven't heard of any of these guys because they're all AHL players. So they'll most likely get 2-way contracts. So the max you can get, I think, is $925,000. So, I mean, they're not going to get a very high bidder for that, and because of that, they're all in league min contracts anyway. So, next up is going to be Vinny Hinostroza for Chicago. So, I think Hinostroza will probably get about maybe like another 3-2 or another 2-4. I have a feeling if he does go a little bit longer term, the price will be a little bit lower. It's kind of the opposite than most guys. But I think if he does go a little bit higher, which I think he will, he'll probably be like a 2-4. And I think 2-4 is what I'm going to go with. Mainly just because I think he does look for that long-term stay, and I think he will take that team-friendly deal. Overall, they have been known to take team-friendly deals on Chicago, so I think with that mindset involved, I think he will take a little bit shorter of a contract. Then you got Peary, who's league min, and Quenville, who will be league min. And then we're going to come on to the one of the hottest names right now is Gabriel Landeskog. I think he will, despite all this. I think, assuming Seattle doesn't pick him for contract reasons, I think what will happen is that Landeskog and Colorado will go to the last day of before free agency, and then at the last minute they'll sign a deal, just to basically say, you know, there is that stall game of who wants to bite first, and I think Colorado will bite first, and they'll probably pay him. My guess is probably like an 8/8 contract, just to try and lock him up long term. He is their captain, so it's not like it's a surprising move, but he might go a little lower, 7/5, but I think in the end it'll be about an 8/8 contract. For Saad, I think he does provide for the team a little bit more, so I think he'll be about a 4/2 kind of contract. So I think that'll be good for both sides. $4 million, 2 years. Get that player that will help you out in the long run. And then Calvert, Belmar, Tynan, Drives, I think will all be league men. Most of these guys, and O'Brien and Vecchione, mainly just because these guys are going to be, so Belmar and Calvert will mostly be leadership kind of guys, so they won't be logging that many minutes or anything like that. So I think in the end, and then the rest of them are all HL players, but I think in the end it'll be mostly just because they're not overly good players, and I don't think Colorado will want to offer them that much money. But they definitely could. There's always a shot with it. But other than that, well, so now it's Columbus. So I think Delpy, Matteau, and McInnes will all be leagueman contracts. And then you got Dubinsky, who's been injured for a long time. So I think he'll retire now. Now he's not getting paid any money. So I think he'll be the second retirement in our list. But I think it does make sense for Dubinsky to retire. He's obviously been injured a long time, so I don't know if it makes sense for him to come back at this current moment. But there's always a shot. You know, these players don't like retiring, but you never know. So next up is Cogliano in Dallas. So I think this will be another 2/2 contract. Might be a 1/5. I'm starting to lean more 1/5, but it'll probably be 1/7 just to throw it in the middle. But it'll be 2 years because they kind of want to lock him up long term. Well, long term for an older guy. So I think that 2/2 contract will work out pretty well for them. And then Dowling is obviously not an NHL player, so he'll be a leagueman contract as well. Moving on to Detroit with Helm. I think Helm will be a player that will get another one of these 2/2 contracts. Maybe it's a 2/1. I think it might end up being a 2/1, just mainly because he is an older guy. So they're not really bringing him in for his talents. It's more just that leadership opportunity. And because of that, I think that's what they'll do. Filppula, I think, will be a league min, maybe. If not, he's retiring because he's getting up there in age as well. So I don't know if they really would want him on a very big contract. Of course, they might. You never know with these kind of teams. And then Glendening, Ryan, and Gagne, Hyros, Elson, Crisculo are all also going to be all leagueman contracts. Next up is Chason on the Edmonton Oilers. So I think he will be a little bit more. He might be like a 3/1. That's sort of my guess with this guy because he's not a overly involved player, but he will log those kind of minutes. So I think it is important for them to overall just go for it. Obviously, they do want him. They haven't said they're not going to go after him yet, but overall, I think he will be a player to look for that will get sort of that league min $3 million, or like it'll be $3 million is kind of the cap for him. I think no more than that. They'll probably go lower than that, but you never know because it's the Edmonton Oilers and Ken Holland, so you don't know what kind of contract they're going to sign. Moving on to Ennis will be league man, Quinn would be league man, and Gambrella will be league man, Russ will be league man. And then on to the Florida Panthers with Wenberg. I think Wenberg will get a little bit bigger of a contract, not in terms of money-wise, but I think more just with the overall talent. So I think it'll be about a 3/5. Not necessarily money. He's more just looking for a long-term stay, and because of that, I think he will end up being a good, solid player for them. Moving on to the Wilson. More Florida, Gusev, and will both be leagueman contracts. Nothing crazy out of them. Gusev might get a little bit more, mainly because he is a better player. But I think in general it won't be that much of a big contract. I think it'll more be maybe a little bit longer term. So with longer term comes more money. But overall, I think it will end up being about a league min contract. Next up is Marcus Johansson on the Minnesota Wild. So I think the Wild are a little more lenient when it comes to contracts. So I think they'll might push a little bit harder for Johansson. Overall, he is a better player than most of these guys on the list that have got these kind of 2-2, 2-3 contracts. So I think in the end, he might get like a 5/2 kind of contract, just mainly because he's not an excellent player. Like on most teams, he'd probably be a second line, third line kind of guy. But with the Wild, they do like to give a little bit more generous contracts early, and then kind of league min them later on in their thing, saying we already paid you the money, now take a shorter contract and we actually start to contend. So I think that 5/2 might make more sense for Johansson, and then after that they'll put him on some sort of smaller contract. He might move on after that, you never know, but overall, I think the next one will be Bonino. I think he'll be league min. If not, he's 1-5. He's not a terribly good player. He does provide the leadership, obviously, with Pittsburgh. He was a part of that run. So I think he does show that kind of leadership qualities that teams are looking for, especially Minnesota, where they're starting to come up a little bit more. Obviously, they got rid of two of their big guys in Suter and Parise for their captain-wise. So I think it's important for them to have some of that leadership team. But overall, they're not going to go crazy with contracts on Bonino, as they can just go out in free agency and find somebody new. So we got our first actual signing in Cramarosa. He was a recent signing. So the reason why it's green is basically just to show that it actually did happen. So he is on a league minimum contract, so because of that he has the green little check mark. So all my blues are my predictions, and so are the reds. But once it actually starts going, I will just switch up the colors, so it'll be green. And then if he switches team, it'll be red inside the team bracket with a green contract. Overall, now we have the Dumont, who's all these guys are going to be league min: Dumont, Johnson, Rao, Mayhew. And then we're on to the Montreal Canadiens with a player, Thomas Tatar. So I think Tatar will be a real kind of bargain kind of player. So I think he might, my prediction as of now is that he'll go to the Leafs. I'm not sure if he will. Obviously he played for Montreal, so it's hard to go to a team that they absolutely hate just because you want to kind of put it in their face. But I think Tatar will end up being on the Leafs. It makes the most sense. And they'll probably sign him to about a 4x4, which I think is beneficial for both sides. Overall, he is a player that's looking for a home now. He's been around, he's been with Vegas, he's been with Detroit. So I think if he signs a 4x4 with the Leafs, he does get that first line kind of opportunity, playing alongside Marner and Matthews. He does. The one thing I would say about this though is that Hyman does now provide nothing for them, so they definitely will not be a part of that team, and they'll move on. But which makes sense because Hyman isn't really going to be on the Leafs anymore unless something drastic changes over the next few days. But I don't believe Hyman will be back, and Tatar will be the replacement for him. Next up is Deneau, and Deneau has been having some issues with the Habs, and he's not really looking to be a big team player for him. So right now he's looking for about a 5-5 contract. So I think a team that's looking at him now, I think might end up happening, would be a team like the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks aren't a contending team, but they're also not in a lot of cap trouble. So I think a 5x5 for them would not be the end of the world. And Deneau will play you that kind of defensive game, similar to a Bergeron, but obviously Bergeron's a better player. But overall, I think Deneau will get that 5-5 out of a team like Anaheim, mainly just because he's looking for it and he doesn't care where he is. He just wants the money right now. Of course, it's early on in his career, so it's not like he's terribly worried about winning. He got his shot this year, obviously playing with the Habs, so I don't really know what's going to happen with him. It's really a toss-up. Could go anyway. And then we're on to Joel Armia. And I think Armia will be maybe a 2 guy, but I think I'll put down a league min contract for him because that's sort of my prediction on him. I don't know if he'll go terribly far with it, but you never know. Moving on to Stahl. Stahl is an interesting one for me. I think he will end up staying with the Habs, although he might go somewhere else. I'm going to assume he's staying with the Habs. It won't be a big contract. It'll be league min probably, as well as Frolie, Perry. And then Belzile already signed a contract earlier. So I think Stahl does make sense to be on league min, mainly because he's not, he does have that veteran leadership a little bit more than some of the other guys, but overall he's not blowing your socks off with anything. Perry is obviously one of their better players, but he was a force to be reckoned with, bringing that leadership. But he's not going anywhere but Montreal, from what I've understood. So with that, I think he'll be league min in Montreal. Next up is Mikael Granlund. Granlund, it's a difficult pick for me, but I think he will end up staying with Nashville. Similar to the no contract at 5, I'm going 5.5 over 5. I think that'll be the end selection here, mainly because Granlund is a player that does provide for the team offensively, defensively, and leadership-wise. So overall, I think he will deserve that kind of 5.5 contract. Next up is Erik Haula on the Predators again. So I think Haula will be a little bit cheaper, maybe at like a 3.5. Obviously, Nashville's starting to try and pick players up that they can keep long-term. So I think that's one of the reasons why Haula will be such a force, especially contract-wise. So I think that's why they'll sign him to that kind of contract. And then all the league men, so Richardson, Malone, Carcone, mainly just because they're not overly players that are going to blow your socks off, but they're mostly AHL guys that might have a shot later on. So they'll probably sign about 3 years on their deals, and then 9.25 max, and probably lower than that. Then New Jersey doesn't have a lot of players that you actually have to worry about. Street, Senny, and Jost. I think they'll all be league min contracts, nothing crazy. Most of these guys are AHL guys, if not, they're fourth line guys that might have a shot later, but I don't think that they'll go too far, and I think they'll mostly stay in the AHL. Next up is the Islanders, and obviously the Islanders have been clearing some cap recently, so I think they are going to try and pursue some players, especially their free agents, as they also have to sign Pelech, and so I think mainly, though, they will take a look at Cizikas, Palmieri, and Zajac. Those will be their money makers. So I think Cizikas might go maybe like a 4 over 1. Zajac will probably be 4 over 1. And I think Palmieri will be a 4 over 1 as well. I think they'll try and sign their guys to relatively similar contracts, as they are kind of similar in their roles. But overall, it will be interesting to see, because I don't know if they'll go long term. But you never know. They might, if they find one where they go 2.5 over maybe 3 years, kind of risking that oldness kind of catching up to them. Obviously, Palmieri, Zajac, and Cizikas all starting to get up there in the age. So you never know with these guys. They may or may not end up going. But overall, I think the 4-1 will work for most of these guys. And then obviously there will be some exceptions, maybe with a little bit higher or lower. Next up, we have Bardreau, Fritz, Hosang, and on the Islanders. Then we're on to the Rangers, who has one contract, and DG Seppi, who I think will also be a league min contract, nothing crazy. And then we're on to the Ottawa Senators with Derek Stepan. Stepan's already announced that he doesn't want to come back to the Senators, so it's kind of a toss-up for where he goes. I don't have a clue where he might end up. I do see him on a team maybe like a Detroit, where they are kind of lacking that veteran leadership. Obviously, they do need someone like that, and I think Stepan would kind of help out with that a little bit more. But I do think Stepan will go to a team like Detroit, which will be my pick, at maybe like a 4 over 2 contract. Mainly because he is a player that's going to want money. Going to a team that isn't competing as of right now, I think it's important for him to get the money. But overall, I think if he does go 4 over 2, it's not handcuffing rather the Detroit Red Wings, mainly because they're not in cap trouble right now. So I think the 4 over 2 would work in Detroit for Stepan. But other than that, not a crazy deal. Next up is Anisimov. I think Anisimov will probably get about a 3 over maybe 5 or 6 contract. I'm going to go 3 over 5. Mainly because they want to lock this guy up. You don't know where he's going to be. He'll be either really good or really bad. But I think if they can lock him up early, they might get the best steal out of him. But if he does bad, it's whatever. It's $3 million over 5 years of just dead cap. So I think in general it's not the worst thing for them, but it is definitely going to be a troubling contract. I think it will help them in the long run. I'm not sure of that yet, but of course we'll have to see. That's the joys of free agency. Then you got Dzingel, who I think will be most likely league min, Haley, Pekka, and then we're on to the Philadelphia Flyers. So the Flyers, I think between Andrioff, Mullen, will both be league min contracts. Not much of a surprise. These guys aren't terribly good. They won't be top line guys, so don't have to look for big contracts. You might get a 1.5 out of them. You never know, but overall, it'll be kind of smaller contracts for both these guys. And then into Pittsburgh, so Sevier, Gaudreau, and Rodriguez, I all got going on 1.5 over 2 contracts, 1.5 over 2 contracts, mainly because they're not overly great players, but they do log minutes and they do have the potential to go high. So I think if they go the 1.5 route, that gives them something to work towards. But in general, of course, they're going to be sort of two-way players. They'll go up and down through the AHL and the NHL. So I think it will be somewhat similar to that 1.5 over 2 contract. Next up, you have Sorensen on San Jose. So Sorensen, I'm not entirely sold that it will be returning, but I think if he does, it'll be about I think it'll be another 2 over 2 contract. Mainly just because he's not going to blow your socks off, like I've said before. Most of these guys aren't going to blow your socks off, but they will kind of go back to their hometown for a cheaper contract. As well, Ledinov, league min, and then Marleau, who I think will be a retiring player. So I don't think he will get a contract. If he does, of course, it'll be because it's a league min. You won't get much more. And he just wants to try and win a cup, but of course it's San Jose, so he'll probably move teams if he does want to win a cup. No offense, San Jose, but you guys aren't winning a cup. And then for the rest of San Jose, you got Gabriel, who'll be league min as well. Moving on down to St. Louis, you got Schwartz, who I think will sign a little bit higher, but for a shorter term. So maybe I think it'll be something along the lines of like a 5-2, mainly just because he's not going to be in there to win, but instead kind of provide for those younger guys that are coming up. Similar to Bozak, who's the next guy up. I don't know if he will get money. I think he might get term, but he's definitely not going to get a lot of money. So he might be a 1.5 over like 3 or over 2. He's starting to get up there in age, so he's not really there for his talent. It's more for the leadership. But I'm going to give him a league min contract anyway, because I don't think he will get a lot of money. Just because he's not as good as he used to be. And then next up will be Hoffman. Hoffman, I'm not sold, will be returning to St. Louis as well, but I don't know where he would go, so I think he might stay in St. Louis for those reasons. But mainly, I think it will be a bigger contract for Hoffman, most likely like a 5 over 5. Mainly because he is a good player, and he's not going to go anywhere in terms of skill-wise. He still has room to grow. So I think in general he will be a pretty solid pickup for them, especially if they can sign him early to a longer term, which is why I think they'll go 5 over 5. And then for the league mins, McKenzie, Walker, Poganski. And then so Steen, obviously, is another player that's been injured for a long time, so I think he will also retire. He might come back, you never know, but I think he will end up being retired, so I don't know if you'll be seeing him again. And then you got Blake Coleman, who I think will hopefully re-sign in Tampa. I hope for Tampa's sake that they can be able to re-sign him. He's a good little player, and I think he'll go for maybe like a 3 over 5 kind of deal. And then for Gaudreau, who was just recently traded into New York for a 7th round pick, I think what he'll end up doing is, so I'm going to keep it blue because New York now has the rights, but I think what he'll end up doing is like a 2.5 over another like 2.5 over like a 6. So overall, I think he is a player that does end up taking that kind of deal, locking up long term, which I know is what he's looking to do, taking a little bit less money, because obviously he's not your first line kind of player. He's that 4th line, 3rd line kind of guy. But in general, it's a good contract for both sides. He's getting his money, he's getting his term, and he's not handcuffing the Rangers. Especially as an up-and-coming team, I think that's the best trade that they can do. And then we'll move on to Nieves, who's going to be league min. Smith, Witkowski, and then on to the Leafs with Nash. I'm not sure Nash will be terribly high in terms of contract. I'm not sure he'll re-sign with the Leafs because there's not a lot of room for him, but I think with the addition of McCann, I think Nash starts to have a bigger role on the team, especially with Hyman and Foligno leaving. I think Nash now becomes that fourth line center kind of guy, mainly because Foligno took that kind of spot before where he'd play up and down the lineup. But in general, I think Nash will probably get about a 2-2 contract. It makes sense for the Leafs to sign him. Definitely to keep him around. No doubt that you don't want to keep him around. But I think in general he'll be that kind of up and down the lineup kind of guy. Moving on to the Leafs with Hyman again. So I've mentioned before, Hyman, I don't see him coming back. I think he will go to a team. As of now, they're not terrible front runners, but I think Detroit at 5.5 over 5 years. They kind of have the money to do it, so I think with them will be kind of the idea that it'll be a team like Detroit who will get them. And then next up, the other Leaf that's big right now is Foligno, and I think Foligno will go probably to Minnesota to play with his brother. So I think Minnesota at maybe like a 3 over 2 contract. He doesn't deserve to be paid that much. He's not that great of a player anymore. But he does provide that leadership. Of course, he was their captain on Columbus. So I think in general he will be a player that will be getting that kind of 3-2 contract. Next up, you have the league men. So Galchenyuk, if he stays, Nosen, I think. Agostino's an AHL player. Thornton, he's either retiring or signing league men. I think he'll be league men, especially if they see fit for him. So I think in general, I think Thornton will be a part of that team, obviously providing that leadership. But in general, I think Thornton will be around. And then Sabrin, obviously, will be league min. You might remember him from the Ottawa Matthews incident, but whatever, it was funny. Moving on, you have Suter on Vancouver, who I think will be probably about a 3-2, 3-3 guy. Nothing crazy. He doesn't really deserve too much money. And then Bachersky, I think, will be either retiring or league min. So I think I'm going to go league min just because I don't see him getting a lot of money, and I'm not sure he'll retire yet. And then VC, VC's my one that I do believe might end up getting sort of a 1.5 or a 2 kind of contract, but for 1 year. But I think in general he'll probably stay under like the 1 mark for longer term again. So I think VC will be the league min contract. And then you got your AHL, which is Bailey and Graverall, Boyd. All these guys will be kind of taking that. And then you got Ovi, of course, UFA this year. So there have been rumors that he's going out to Russia to play. I think the 2 teams that have a shot at him is Washington, obviously, and then Montreal will be the second team. Obviously, he's shown interest with the Habs. So I think in general, I do see Ovi going to the Capitals, and I think they'll do something a little bit special for him. Maybe going with like an 8 over 1 contract just to show the number, right? Because the grade 8, obviously he's been a big part of that team. So I think they'll reward him with that kind of contract. They might not. They might give him like a 5-1, but I don't see the term being that long, especially if they go higher in money. So I think 8 over 1 for this year. And then they might go a little bit lower, like a 4 over 2 or a 4 over 1 for like the next few years. Then you got Raffle, who probably isn't getting a lot of money. He might be league min, he might be 2. It's hard to tell because obviously you don't know what exactly they're looking at with Raffle. They might have a new role for him. If they have a new role for him, he's probably getting a little bit more. If they don't, he's probably getting that league min. For Winnipeg, you got Stastny. I think he'll be sticking around. Probably like a 3 over 2 contract as well, trying to help the team win. Obviously, this is a win now team with the Winnipeg Jets, but I do think that they do need to try and figure out how to address what they're missing in their defense. Obviously, you'll see it on the next list with the defense. Overall, what they're kind of trying to do. I think in general, their goal is to try and build that defense up. While trying to maintain their forwards. Obviously, they got really good forward strength. Their defense is severely lacking. So I think in general, if they can protect as many defense and try and sign their guys, I think it's probably going to be the best for them. Perreault, Thompson, and Lewis will all be league min contracts. And then finally, you got the buyout in Parise. I'm not sold on where he'll go yet. I do believe that a team, maybe like Ottawa or a team that's kind of looking for veterans, Colorado as well, I think is a big up and comer in this. I don't see him going to Boston per se. There's always a chance they do. Toronto's a chance, although I do think he might be a little much. Tampa, I don't see him because of the cap. But overall, I do see Pittsburgh as well. Pittsburgh is the one team I do have my eyes on with Suter, or Parise rather. So I think in the end it will be Colorado that goes out and gets him. The money though will most likely be pretty minimal, maybe like a 3/2. Mainly just because they're trying to keep him cheap. And if they give him a chance to win, it's obviously better for them. So I think in the long run, Parise will end up going to Colorado for $3 million over 2 years. All right, so now on to the defense. I think a player of Anaheim will start off with is Walensky. He'll be league min. Overall, doesn't provide a lot. He's going to be a probably bottom 6, if not an AHL player. So I don't think he'll be getting a lot of money, nor long term. But next up, we got it with Arizona. We got Goligoski. So Goligoski, I think, provides some more of that kind of leadership role that the Arizona Coyotes are looking for. Obviously, they're not a contending team right now. They do have some younger guys that are starting to provide for them. So I think that leadership role becomes more and more important. So I think with Goligoski, he'll probably get about a 2/2, mainly just to bring leadership, not as much for his talents. He's not going to blow your socks off with the talent, but he does provide that good leadership. Obviously a veteran player, as well as the next guy from Arizona who is Hjalmarsson. So I think he'll also get a 2/2, mainly because he is a good player. But he does provide a lot more leadership than his talent would suggest. Then you got Demers, who I think will be either league min, maybe, or he'll be 2/2, similar to the other contracts. But I think Demers is a little bit less important to the Arizona system in terms of their leadership core. So I think Demers won't necessarily be the pick. Next up is Osterley, league min. Gross, league min. Ness, league min. I think that's not too much of a surprise. I don't see them being very high contracts, but you never know. It's Arizona. Next up, you got Riley. So with Riley, Mike Riley with Boston, he did have a good season with Boston. So I don't know if he'll stick around. If he sticks around, good for Boston if they can keep him. Obviously, with Sweeney in charge, you never know what's going to happen. But in general, with Riley, I think if they can keep him, they'll definitely keep him. He was really good with them, obviously logging a lot of minutes, a lot of power plays, opportunities, especially as they're trying to figure it out. I think McAvoy will take the helm this year, but obviously we'll have to wait and see. But I think in general with Riley, he will get a little bit bigger of a contract. He's looking a little bit more towards his future, so I think something like a 3/3 would work for both teams. Would work for both parties. I do see Riley potentially getting a shorter contract with a lot less money. With Sweeney in charge as well, he'll try and negotiate with him, but you never know. And then Tenorti will be a league min contract. He doesn't play a lot, but you never know with him. He might get a little 1-2, 1-3 kind of deal. And then you got McCabe, who I think will also be one of these 2-2 kind of guys. I could also see him getting league min. It's just a matter of what happens in Buffalo. I think with Buffalo having cap space, the players will start demanding more money, especially as they're not really a contending team. They keep rebuilding, they keep doing whatever, but they haven't quite figured it out yet. So I think the more they ask for more money, the more trouble they're going to be in. Next up, you have Davidson, who's league min, Aaron, who's league min, and then we're on to Calgary with Stone. I think Stone will be a league min, potentially being a 1-5, but in general, I think it will be a league min contract, as well as Nestorov, who will be league min, and Petrovic, I think, league min as well. And then we're on to the big defensive name in the class, which is obviously Dougie Hamilton. So I see Hamilton going to Seattle. Obviously, if you watch my Swiping to Seattle videos, I did see with a chance that there was a decent opportunity with Hamilton with Seattle. But I think, especially as I've started to see what's going on in terms of their protection lists, I don't see Ron Francis going after Hamilton, as there's better players and they can probably trade up for him or whatever. But in general, I do see another team popping up that's really important with Hamilton going to the Winnipeg Jets. Obviously, the Jets are lacking in their defense. As I mentioned before, they're going to try and save money on their forwards to try and spend more money with their defense. So I think in general, and I do think that I think a player like Hamilton's a big deal. So I think Winnipeg will be able to sign him at about 8/5. I think with his talent-wise, I think there is a good shot. But I don't know about what will end up happening there. You got Hakanpää will be a league min contract as well with McEwen. And then we're up to Chicago with Lindholm, who will be 1. And then so Nemeth with Colorado and Burrows both will be not super players. And then Renouf, obviously all these guys are Colorado league min contracts, nothing crazy. They will provide, but they're not going to be anything crazy for them. And then you got Columbus, so Bayreuther will be league min. Clendening, I could see going a little bit higher, mainly just because of the leadership that he does kind of bring. But I think he'll be league min as well as Delzato. And then Lettinen, I think will end up being league min. It's hard to tell. He may or may not. He's a new kind of player, so he might get a little bit more just because he does have a little bit more potential than the other guys. But with that being said, he's not going crazy money. Next up, you have Alexiak. So I think Alexiak will get probably about a 4/2 contract, mainly because he is a better player and he's on Dallas. So they are a little bit more lenient in terms of contracts. So I think with that he will get about a 4/2, and then similar to another team that I mentioned before, with they pay high up front, and then later on in their career they expect team friendly deals. So I think it'll be similar with Alexiak, a lot of money up front, and then later on with their deals. And then Vatanen, Sami Vatanen, I think will be either league min or $2 million. It's close, so I think I might call it 1.5, put it in the middle, but I think he'll be a little bit lower. He's not as good as he used to be, but I think he does still provide that opportunity with the Dallas Stars, that he does have a shot with playing a little bit more minutes, but you never know with him. He might be out for another year or so. So I think Vatanen won't be a very highly paid player, but in general he is still a good player nonetheless. You have Pysyk and Feeden. Both these guys are going to be league min contracts, not too much surprise. And then we could move on to Detroit with Stahl. I think Stahl will be another one of these 2-2 contracts, especially on a team like Detroit where you're not going to be getting a lot of money anyway. I think it's not a terrible pick for them. And then you're on to Viega, Hicketts, and so these guys are all going to be league mins. Mikko Rath, mainly because they're not going to blow your socks off with talent, and they're mostly AHL guys. And then we'll move on to Edmonton with Adam Larsson, obviously everybody's favorite player, who obviously won the Taylor Hall trade. No one debates that. So Larsson, I think, will end up being a good player for Edmonton, and I think because of that, I think we'll get probably a 3-2 deal, mainly because they want to try and lock him up for longer terms, but not as long as maybe another player like the next guy with Tyson Barrie. So I think Barrie obviously had a real good year with Edmonton, so I think he'll get maybe like a 4/6, mainly because he does run their power play, and typically when you run a good power play, you get a lot of money. So because of that, I think Barrie will end up being about a 4/6 kind of guy. And then we move down the list with Kulikov. So I think Kulikov isn't getting a lot of money, nor will Slater Cuckoo. I think in general there might be some money that goes involved with them, but in the end I don't think it'll be as much as some of these guys might hope. Next up is Montour for Florida. So with Montour, I'm not certain he'll return, but he might end up being on Winnipeg. You definitely see him going after Winnipeg. But in general, I think Montour might go back to New Jersey or another team, but I'm going to keep him with Florida for now. I'm not certain he will move, but if he does, obviously Montour is a good player for them. So I think with Florida having the first go at him, I think it'll be about a 4/2 contract. He's not worth that money, but I think with him having interest at different teams, I think Florida will overpay for him. Moving on down the list, we have Cross and Prow and Kepper. All these guys are all league min contracts, nothing surprising. And then we're on to LA with Alt and Brickley. So I think both these guys are going to be league min contracts. Nothing too surprising. They're not overly good players, but they will provide for the team. And then we will move down to Ian Cole on Minnesota. So Minnesota, I think, will pay Cole quite a bit of money. I think they'll lose Susie in the draft. I think it's going to be what's going to end up happening there. But if they lose Rask, I think Cole will get a little bit less money and Susie will start to play a little bit more minutes. But in general, I think Cole will be an issue for the Wild, and I do think that he will take a little bit more money than what he should deserve. So I think he will so what I would sign him for is a 4/2. But since it's the Wild, I think they'll end up going 6/4. Mainly just because I want to lock him up long term, and I think that that's going to be the price for him. It's way overpaid, I agree with that, but I think in the end, that's what they'll end up doing. Moving on down the list, you got Bartkowski, who's Minnesota, not going to make a lot of money. McCaution, Mermis, Belpedio. Obviously, all these guys aren't making a whole ton of money. Not a lot of guys you know on the list, but in general, they'll be kind of those league min contracts. Next up, you have Gustafsson, Merrill, and Olofsson, all on the Montreal Canadiens. In general, these guys aren't making money. They won't. Gustafsson will be league min, maybe a 1 or a 1.5, and Merrill will be a lot less. So basically, and then we're on to Nashville now. So Goodbranson, I think we'll get maybe like a 2 over maybe 2 again. He's not a lot of money. He's not a lot of good player, but in general, he will be kind of that 2-2 player. And then we're on to Lewington, who will be another not terribly high-paid player, but he will kind of be that. And then we're on to Murray with New Jersey. So I think Murray will get probably about a 5/4 deal, which pays quite a bit, obviously. But in general, I think that is kind of worth what he is, and he will be sort of that better player for the New Jersey Devils. Next up, you got Carrick. Carrick isn't going to be paid a lot, nor Tennyson or Jacobs. And then Braden Coburn with the New York Islanders. I think they'll all be league min contracts. Rangers, same with Smith, Johnson, and Radish. With Ottawa now with Golubouf, I don't see him getting a lot of money either. He might, but you never know. I'm going to give him league min as well. And then moving on to Philly with Pouliot, Weatherspoon, Prosser, Bigris. I think all these guys are all going to be league mins as well. Nothing crazy in terms of their talents, so there's nothing really to pay too heavy for. And then with Pittsburgh and Cody Ceci, I think Ceci will end up making maybe like a 3/5 deal. Lock him up long term. Obviously, he had a good year. He typically doesn't have such a great year. If you remember him with the Toronto Maple Leafs, he was struggling to say the least. But in general, I think he will get probably that 3/5 kind of deal. And then Zuckman will be nothing. Patter, nothing. Ranky. Savard, I don't know where he'll end up. He'll end up. My guess would be a team like Winnipeg or maybe Boston. I'm going to go Boston because I know I've been using Winnipeg a lot for the defense. But I think in general, Boston does need to upgrade their defense. So I think Boston at maybe like a 3-3 deal or a 3-4 deal. I'm going to go 3-4 because I don't think Savard would take that small of a deal. But I'm going to go 3-4 to Boston, which kind of provides him that opportunity to win another cup. I don't see him back in Tampa, mainly because he's not that contract nice, especially with Tampa up against the cap. It doesn't make a lot of sense for them to do that. Next up, you got Shen, who isn't anything. Clayson's already signed a league minimum deal. Lashoff, Thomas, Borgman. And then we're on to the Leafs. I think the Leafs will resign Zach Bogosian, league min as well. Hayden Rosen's the same. Edler, I think, is going to retire. If not, he's league min to Vancouver. He's not going anywhere fast, so I think he'll be retired. Next up is Travis Hamnick. So I think Hamnick will make maybe like a 3/1 deal, 3/2 deal. I'm going to go 3/1 deal, mainly because he's not terribly good, but he's going to make money because of his name value. So next up, we go down the list. So Saunders, league min, Chatfield, Tevs, Rafferty, Chara. Chara is a different subject, so I'm not sure what's going to happen with Chara. I think he does have the potential to retire. He also has the thing to go to another year with Washington. But But the one thing with Char is that he's never been able to skate very well. Early on in his career, he was really good because he could skate, but once he stopped skating, he was the same with Boston. It's just how long his stick is, and because of that, I'm not sure that he's going to be as important to another team. But I think what will end up happening is he'll sign a one-day contract in Boston, and then he'll retire on that day. So I do think Char will retire. So if he does, congrats on a great career. If he doesn't, oh well, it's Char. He'll always be around somewhere. But in general, next up you got Ledoux, and then Jordy Ben. Schilling will be all league mins for Washington, and then for Jordy Ben, I think in general he won't take too big a contract. I think Ben will be league min. Same with Forbort, Pullman, and then for Suter, I also see him going to Winnipeg. Obviously, I got a lot of these guys going to Winnipeg, so I hope I'm right on one. But I do see Suter going to Winnipeg. Wrong marker. I got Suter going to Winnipeg at 5. No, sorry, 3/2, and then Yandel going to Boston at 2/1. So that's my defensive predictions. Now it's time for the goalies. We'll start off with Arizona again. I'm going to come to this side of the board. So we'll start off with Ranta. So I believe Ranta will be re-signed by the Coyotes. Maybe it'll be league min for sure if they do. Obviously they traded away Aiden Hill, so I think that was sort of their idea, was keep Aiden Hill as a backup. But once they traded him away, I think Ranta now becomes important to them. So I think that he will be most likely re-signed, small contract, nothing major. But I think Ranta will be back with Arizona. As for Tuukka Rask, I'm not entirely sure what they'll do. So with Buffalo, with Allmark, I think Boston will take a look at Allmark. So I think if they can sign Allmark, which is currently what I think what's going to happen, they won't re-sign Rask. It doesn't make a lot of sense, especially because Rask is missing the first half of the year. So I believe Rask will be. So we'll call Rask will be signed for now, with the condition though that he will get reinstituted if Hutton does decide to go with Boston, Allmark rather decides to go with Boston, because it doesn't make a lot of sense for Allmark to be the backup to Rask, especially with Swayman coming up in the prospect pool. I don't see that it would make sense for that to happen. Next up is Halak, and Halak will not be returning to Boston, I don't believe. My prediction is that he'll go to Pittsburgh for a league min deal. I don't see him going very high. He's not a terribly goalie that's gifted in that sort of respect, but he is a capable backup, and I do believe with Pittsburgh having younger goalies like Yari, I think Halak will be a very good presence for Yari to try and develop, and because of that, I think that Halak will end up in Pittsburgh. Next up is Hutton, so Hutton will get league min. And then Allmark. So Allmark, as I mentioned before, I think will end up being in Boston. If he does, obviously Rask won't be signed, and Rask will probably retire, because he's came out and said that he doesn't want to play anywhere but Boston. So I believe that with that being said, he won't come back. But I think Allmark will go to Boston. That's currently my prediction. But in general, I think it could go either way. There's definitely a consensus for both sides. The one issue though is with Rasko for most of the year, they're going to need a backup, and because of that, I think Allmark kind of plays either that starter/backup role. But I think Allmark in the end will be a good fit for Boston. So I think if they do sign him, they'll go after him 3x2. But I could see either way whether or not they go for him. Next up, Hauser for Buffalo. I think he'll get re-signed league min. Same with Domingue. Bibeau for Carolina, and then Reimer and Mrazek, they don't need one of them. I'm not sure. I think what they'll end up doing is re-signing one of them. But in the end, I think it'll be Mrazek with Nedeljkovic being the backup. But in general, I do see them signing Reimer just to trade him, mainly to a team that does have some sort of potential, sort of as a backup role. I could see Boston going after him as well as the Leafs. I see the Leafs going after a guy like that mainly because they do need a goalie. Campbell isn't a proven starter yet. I still believe that. I think that he needs to play a little bit more. But in general, I think Mrazek will be re-signed maybe 3x5, or sorry, 5x3 rather. And then Reimer will be a little bit less, maybe 2x2, mainly just to trade him. I don't see him playing at all with Carolina, especially when they got Nedeljkovic, who's been red hot. But in general, I think that's what's going to happen. For Colorado with Grubauer, I think he'll be a little bit more, maybe at like a 6/6. They want to try and lock him up long term, obviously. He's a good player for them, so because of that, I think he'll be signed up pretty expensively. And then with Dallas with Bow, nothing crazy here, league min. Bernier, I think they will bring back to Detroit. It's hard to tell. Obviously, he was really good this year. Not a great team in front of him, so it's always hard to determine what's up with the team that, especially when you play on a team like Detroit where they're not winning a lot of games. It's important for them to overall consider what's going on. So I think with that in mind, I think Bernier will get probably about a 3/5 contract. Long-term deal, just to kind of say we believe in you, and we'll wait until we have another prospect that might take your spot, and then you'll become our backup because you're still a quality goaltender. But in general, I think that's a pretty good deal for the Bernier as well as the Red Wing. Boyle will get most likely the league man. Pickard as well in Detroit, and then we're on to Edmonton with Mike Smith. So I think Smith is definitely going to re-sign with Edmonton. I think it'll be probably about a 5/5 contract as well. Long term with a goalie that will most likely be a part of that team for a long time. So I think it's a good trade for both sides, or a good signing for both sides rather. And because of that, I think he'll be protected. Next up, we got Drieger, and I think Drieger will be Seattle, mainly because I think that they'll sign him. So I think it's a good deal for Seattle. I'm going to stick him at maybe like a 5/3. But in general, it is a good trade for them, and I think because of that, I think they'll definitely be doing it. But I think, especially with Drieger not having a starter role in Florida with Bobrovsky, I think it's more important than ever that Drieger gets a starting role. So I don't see Seattle going crazy high on goaltending if they want to sign Drieger, because I think Drieger's just looking to maybe become a starter or something, so they can sign him 3/5. I think it's important for Drieger to be a starter, especially on a rebuilding team. Well, we'll see what they end up doing, but I think Drieger will be the selected pick from the Florida Panthers in the expansion draft, and because of that, they're going to sign him in free agency. Moving on, we got Florida with their Roziers. He'll be league min. Grosnick will be league min. Hammond will be league min. The Hamburglar, of course. Lindgren will be league min. Dell will be league min. Schneider on the Islanders will be league min. Elliott, I believe they will bring him back. I know Carter Hart had a bad year this year, and Elliott ended up getting a lot of the minutes, but I think in general, Elliott will be their backup goaltender in those silent league men. Because of that, with Lyon, of course, being the third string, like I say, rather, and then Gillies on St. Louis will be league men. Tampa Bay, McElwain will be league men. Gibson will be league men. A lot of league men goaltenders just because there are not a lot of good ones on the market right now. But Riddick also will be league men. So Anderson is the one goalie I'm not entirely sure where he'll end up. I can see him going back to Anaheim, mainly just because they do need they might need him for a trade or something, but it doesn't make a lot of sense with Anaheim. They need to trade him basically to a team without goaltending, and there's not a lot. Ottawa's got theirs, Detroit's got Bernier, and Columbus has got one goalie and Korpisalo, and so I'm not entirely sure where he'll end up. Although I have an idea of what the contract will be. I think it'll be 5/5 to some team. I don't know what team it'll be yet. It might be like a team like Buffalo. I could see a team like Buffalo definitely getting them. But in general, I think it is important for these teams to go after someone big. So I think with that, Anderson will be the obvious selection. So the next Anderson I'll talk about is Craig Anderson. I think he'll be retiring this year, mainly because he's not what he used to be, and because of that, I think he'll retire. He did play a little bit in the playoffs with Washington against Boston. but of course he didn't fare terribly well. So I think I don't see him coming back. I don't see him signing anywhere else. So I think that will be the end of Craig Anderson's career. And then finally, the last two goaltenders, Brossois and Comrie. And with that, that will be all of my predictions for the 2021-2022 unrestricted free agency. And if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. If you liked it, drop a like. For your likes, consider subscribing, tell all your friends about it, and leave a comment down below on your thoughts on my predictions. Until next time, see ya.